A mama dog looks confused after giving birth to 4 kittens instead of puppies. At first, it seems like a sweet miracle, an abandoned dog suddenly nursing newborn kittens. But what starts as heartwarming quickly twists into something darker. Powerful people step in, demanding the kittens back, and that's when the danger begins. Secrets are hidden in plain sight, and someone will do anything to keep the truth from coming out. This simple rescue isn't simple at all. It's the spark that sets off a battle of lies, betrayal, and life or death choices. Can one woman protect the helpless creatures she loves, or will the forces against her crush everything in their path? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more thunder. Rumbled through the darkening sky as Greer Linden pulled into the parking lot of Blue Hollow Roadside Clinic. The small veterinary facility's lights cast a warm glow against the gathering storm clouds. She grabbed her worn backpack from the passenger seat, bracing herself for another long night shift ahead. "Here we go again," she muttered, hurrying through the first heavy drops of rain to reach the clinic's side entrance. The familiar jingle of her keys echoed in the empty hallway as she unlocked the door. Inside, the clinic was quiet except for the soft whimpers coming from the recovery room. Greer's heart lifted as she made her way to check on their special patient. There, in a cozy nest of blankets, lay Junebug, a gentle hound mix with soulful amber eyes who had stolen everyone's heart since being rescued last month. "Hey there, sweet girl," Greer cooed, kneeling beside the makeshift bed. Junebug's swollen belly rippled as another contraction passed through her. The dog's tail thumped weakly against the blankets in greeting. "Won't be long now before we meet those puppies of yours." Greer settled in beside Junebug, gently stroking her head while reviewing the day staff's notes. The pregnant dog had been showing early signs of labor since that afternoon. As a certified vet tech, Greer knew these things could take time, but she had a feeling tonight would be the night. A particularly loud crack of thunder made them both jump. Junebug whined softly, pressing closer to Greer's leg. "It's okay, girl. We're safe in here." The storm intensified over the next hour as Greer monitored Junebug's progress and completed her opening rounds. Wind howled around the building's corners, and rain lashed against the windows in heavy sheets. During a brief lull in the downpour, she heard something that made her pause. A faint, high-pitched crying coming from somewhere outside. Frowning, Greer grabbed a flashlight and raincoat from the supply closet. "I'll be right back, Junebug," she promised, seeing the dog's concerned look. "Just need to check something out." The crying grew louder as she approached the narrow alley beside the clinic. Greer's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, finally landing on a soggy cardboard box half hidden behind a dumpster. Her heart sank as she lifted the disintegrating lid. Inside, 4 tiny kittens huddled together, their eyes still sealed shut. They couldn't have been more than a few days old. "Oh, you poor babies," Greer breathed, quickly shedding her raincoat to wrap around the box. "Don't worry, I've got you now." Back inside, she rushed the kittens to the treatment room, her mind already racing through their immediate needs: warmth, hydration, formula. But newborns this young would need round-the-clock care and feeding. With the clinic already short-staffed, how could she manage? A soft whine drew her attention back to Junebug, who had lifted her head with interest at the sound of the kitten's cries. Greer paused, an idea forming. She'd heard of dogs fostering kittens before, though she'd never attempted it herself. But Junebug's gentle nature and maternal instincts— "What do you think, girl?" she asked, carefully bringing the box closer. "Want to help me with these little ones?" Under Greer's watchful eye, she slowly introduced each kitten to Junebug. The dog's response was immediate and heartwarming. She began gently nuzzling the tiny creatures, allowing them to snuggle against her warm belly alongside her own contractions. Amazed by the scene before her, Greer couldn't resist pulling out her phone to record a short video. Junebug looked up at the camera with those soulful eyes. 4 tiny kittens already nursing contentedly while she waited to deliver her own puppies. The sight brought tears to Greer's eyes. "This is what pure love looks like," she narrated softly, panning across the unlikely family. After capturing the beautiful moment, she posted the clip to her personal social media accounts before returning her full attention to her patients. Night passed in a blur of activity. Shortly after midnight, Junebug successfully delivered 6 healthy puppies, never once disturbing the kittens who had joined her growing family. Greer stayed by their side, monitoring everyone's condition and marveling at the beautiful example of unconditional love playing out before her as dawn approached. Greer finally had a chance to check her phone while doing her morning paperwork. Her eyes widened at the notification count. Hundreds of messages, thousands of shares, and comments pouring in from around the world. Her simple video had gone viral overnight. Most responses were overwhelmingly positive. "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Animals have so much to teach us about love and acceptance. That dog is an angel. Thank you for sharing this moment." But there were also darker comments mixed in. "Fake news. No way this is real. Probably drugged the dog to make this happen. Attention seeking much?" Greer's hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through the responses. She'd never sought attention or acclaim. She'd simply wanted to share a moment of pure joy and compassion. Now her inbox was flooding with interview requests from news outlets and morning shows. A soft whine from Junebug pulled her attention back to what truly mattered. The dog lay contentedly in her bed. 12 little lives, 6 puppies and 4 kittens, snuggled safely against her, all thriving under her care. Greer smiled, setting her phone aside. Let people say what they would. She knew she'd witnessed something miraculous last night. "You're teaching us all something. About love without limits," she whispered to Junebug, scratching behind her ears. The dog's tail thumped happily against the blankets as the morning sun finally broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the unlikely family. The notifications kept buzzing, but Greer focused on checking vital signs and ensuring everyone was comfortable. She had no way of knowing how this viral moment would change her life, but right now, in this peaceful morning moment, none of that mattered. What mattered was the pure love she witnessed. In that room, a love that knew no boundaries and asked nothing in return. Morning sun had barely crept over Blue Hollow's horizon when 2 sheriff's department vehicles pulled into the clinic's parking lot, their official markings gleaming against the black paint. Greer was just finishing Junebug's morning checkup when she heard the heavy boots approaching the front door. "Everything's going to be fine," she whispered to Junebug, who was contentedly nursing the 4 tiny kittens. The dog's gentle brown eyes looked up at her trustingly. The clinic's bell chimed as 3 deputies entered, followed by a tall woman whose mere presence seemed to command attention. She wore an expertly tailored cream-colored suit, a string of perfect pearls at her throat, and an expression of cold determination that made Greer's stomach clench. "Miss Linden?" The lead deputy stepped forward, holding out an official-looking document. "I'm Deputy Roberts. We have a court order regarding some kittens in your possession." Before Greer could respond, the elegant woman stepped forward. "I'm Meredith Vance," she announced, her voice carrying the weight of old money and influence. "Those kittens you've been parading all over social media belong to my champion Persian Duchess. They were stolen from my cattery 2 days ago." Greer felt her face flush with anger and disbelief. "That's impossible. I found these kittens abandoned in the alley during the storm. They were soaking wet and nearly frozen. A convenient story," Meredith said dismissively, reaching into her designer handbag to produce several photographs. "These were taken the day before they disappeared. You can clearly see they're the same kittens." Deputy Roberts accepted the photos and compared them to the viral video playing on his phone. "There does appear to be a strong resemblance, ma'am, because they're newborn kittens." Greer protested. Of course they look similar, but these babies were definitely abandoned. They still had their umbilical cords attached when I found them. Meredith's perfectly painted lips curved into a cold smile. Perhaps you'd care to explain how you happened to find them so close to my property. The Vance estate is less than 2 miles from this establishment. The way she said it made the clinic sound like something distasteful. Greer straightened her spine, trying to project more confidence than she felt. I've never been anywhere near your property, Mrs. Vance. These kittens needed help, and Junebug has been an amazing surrogate mother to them. I have everything documented, including their condition when they arrived. Miss Linden, Deputy Roberts interjected. The court order requires you to surrender the kittens to Mrs. Vance immediately. No, Greer said firmly, surprising herself with the strength in her voice. These kittens are under veterinary care. They're too young to be separated from their surrogate mother. It would put their lives at risk. I have a state-of-the-art cattery with professional staff, Meredith countered. They'll receive better care than a stray dog can provide. Junebug whimpered softly from the other room, as if sensing the tension. Greer's protective instincts flared. Junebug isn't just some stray. She's a certified rescue, and she's doing an amazing job with these babies. I won't let you take them. You don't have a choice, Meredith said coldly. Deputies, please retrieve my property. As one of the deputies moved toward the recovery room, Greer stepped in front of him. Wait, I'm invoking my right to contest this order. The kittens are evidence in a potential criminal investigation. Whoever abandoned them committed a crime. You can't remove them until that's resolved. Deputy Roberts hesitated, glancing between Greer and Meredith Vance. Everyone in Blue Hollow knew the Vance family's influence. They owned half the county's grain elevators and the largest freight company in 3 states. Their name was on buildings, scholarships, and the hospital's newest wing. That's within her rights, Mrs. Vance, he said carefully. We'll need to consult with the county prosecutor. Meredith's face hardened. Very well. But I suggest you think carefully about what you're doing, Miss Linden. These accusations of theft and abandonment are very serious. The Vance family has always supported this community, including this clinic. It would be unfortunate if that relationship were to change. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Greer's hands trembled slightly, but she kept her voice steady. I'm not accusing anyone, Mrs. Vance. I'm simply stating facts. I found abandoned kittens and provided emergency care. Everything else needs to be investigated properly. You'll be hearing from my attorneys. Meredith snapped, turning on her heel. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor as she strode out, leaving a wake of tension behind her. Deputy Roberts gave Greer a sympathetic look. We'll need statements from everyone who was present when you found the kittens. And don't leave town. After they left, Greer's legs felt weak. She sank down next to Junebug's bed, watching the dog tenderly clean each tiny kitten. What just happened, girl? She whispered. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chun, the clinic's owner. Emergency staff meeting in 1 hour. Bringing our lawyer. Greer hugged Junebug gently, drawing strength from the dog's steady presence. Something about Meredith Vance's story didn't add up, and those kittens' lives depended on her figuring out what it was. The Vance name might carry weight in Blue Hollow, but Greer wasn't about to let anyone bully her into doing something she knew was wrong. She took fresh photos of the kittens, carefully documenting their size and development. If Meredith Vance wanted a fight, Greer would make sure she had everything she needed to protect these innocent lives, no matter what it cost her. A soft meow drew her attention back to the nest. The smallest kitten, a tiny gray tabby, was stretching its paws in sleep. Junebug immediately leaned down to nuzzle it, demonstrating the gentle devotion that had captured hearts across the internet. We're not giving up, Greer promised them quietly. Not without a fight. She could already imagine the rumors spreading through town, questioning her integrity and judgment. The Vance family's influence ran deep, and Meredith clearly knew how to use it. But Greer had something stronger on her side, the truth, and a mother dog's love that no amount of money or power could fake. The morning brought a flood of notifications on Greer's phone. Her video of Junebug nursing the tiny kittens had spread far beyond Blue Hollow's borders overnight. While many comments celebrated the heartwarming scene, others weren't so kind. "That's got to be fake," one comment read. "Dogs don't nurse cats. This is just someone looking for attention." Greer's hands trembled as she scrolled through the responses. She set her phone down and went to check on her unlikely family. Junebug lay contentedly in her bed, all 4 kittens snuggled against her warm belly. The dog's gentle brown eyes met Greer's, filled with nothing but pure love for her adopted babies. "We know the truth, don't we, girl?" Greer whispered, scratching behind Junebug's ears. The clinic's bell chimed, and Calder Ames walked in, still wearing his fire captain's uniform from the morning shift. His steady presence always brought a sense of calm to any room he entered. "Quite the storm you've stirred up," he said, offering a sympathetic smile. "You holding up okay?" "I'm trying to," Greer admitted. But some of these comments, and now with Meredith Vance claiming these kittens are hers, her voice trailed off. Calder pulled up a chair beside her. "Listen, I've known you since high school, Greer. You're not a faker or a thief. If you say you found those kittens in that alley, then that's exactly what happened." "Thanks, Calder." But Meredith has the whole town convinced otherwise. "She's showing everyone these fancy pedigree papers. Then prove her wrong," Calder said simply. "You're smart, methodical. Use those skills." His words sparked something in Greer. She began examining the kittens more closely, comparing them to the photographs in Meredith's pedigree documentation. The alleged mother cat was a pure Russian blue with distinctive markings. But looking at the kittens now, Greer noticed something off. "These 2 have white patches," she murmured, gently lifting one of the kittens. "And their fur texture is different. Russian blues have dense, plush coats, but these babies," she ran her finger along the kitten's back. "The fur's much shorter." Calder leaned in to look. "Document everything. Take pictures. Keep detailed notes." Greer grabbed her tablet and began photographing each kitten from multiple angles, paying special attention to their distinctive markings. She carefully collected loose fur samples and placed them in clean, evidence bags borrowed from the clinic's supply room. Later that afternoon, she returned to the alley where she'd found the kittens. The storm had washed away most traces, but she took pictures anyway, noting the exact location. She also checked the surrounding building's security cameras and power logs, hoping to piece together what had happened that night. A group of teenagers walked past, pointing and whispering. Greer heard one of them laugh. "There's that crazy vet tech who thinks dogs can be cat moms." Her cheeks burned, but she remembered Calder's words and stood straighter. The truth was worth fighting for, no matter what anyone said. Back at the clinic, she created a detailed timeline of events, cross-referencing it with weather reports from the night she found the kittens. Something caught her eye. There had been a brief power outage in Meredith's neighborhood during the exact time she claimed her prize cat was giving birth. "That's odd," Greer muttered, marking it down. "Her cattery has climate control systems. Wouldn't there be backup generators?" She was so absorbed in her investigation that she barely noticed when Calder returned with coffee and sandwiches. "You need to eat," he insisted, setting them down beside her growing pile of evidence. "Look at this," she said, showing him her findings. "The timing doesn't add up. And these markings, they're completely different from what Meredith's claiming." "Keep digging," Calder encouraged. "But don't forget to take care of yourself too. This is going to be a marathon, not a sprint." As if sensing the tension, Junebug let out a soft whine. Greer went to her, watching as the dog tenderly nuzzled each kitten. The sight strengthened her resolve. "I won't let her take them," she said firmly. "Not when I know something's not right here." "You've got more support than you realize," Calder replied. Not everyone's fooled by Meredith's fancy papers and big name. Throughout the evening, Greer continued gathering evidence. She contacted veterinary genetics experts about coat pattern inheritance in Russian blues. She documented every feeding, every weight gain, every milestone the kittens reached under Junebug's care. The ridicule continued on social media, with some local accounts clearly influenced by Meredith's version of events. But for every mocking comment, there was also a message of support, often from other animal care workers who'd witnessed similar unlikely animal bonds. "Think about it," Calder said as they reviewed her findings. "Why would Meredith wait until after your video went viral to claim these kittens? Why didn't she report them missing right away?" "Good point," Greer said, adding it to her notes. "And why hasn't she produced the mother cat for comparison?" Each small discovery added another piece to the puzzle. Greer might not have Meredith's money or influence, but she had something just as powerful: the determination to uncover the truth, backed by careful observation and methodical documentation. As night fell, Greer watched Junebug cleaning her adopted babies, each tiny kitten responding with contented purrs. The sound gave her strength. Whatever criticism or doubt came her way, she knew in her heart that this unlikely family was meant to be together. And she would prove it, one careful step at a time. The autumn evening had settled over Blue Hollow like a thick blanket, bringing with it an unusual stillness. Greer was finishing her evening rounds at the clinic, checking on the recovering animals before heading home. The familiar scent of antiseptic and clean linens filled the air as she made her way down the dimly lit hallway. Junebug lay contentedly in her special corner of the recovery room, the 4 tiny kittens snuggled against her warm belly. Greer paused to watch them, her heart swelling at the sight. The smallest kitten, a gray tabby she'd nicknamed Pip, was kneading Junebug's side while nursing, his tiny paws moving in a rhythmic dance. "Just one more patient check. Guys," Greer whispered, patting Junebug's head. "Then we can all get some rest." She had just stepped into the surgical prep area when an acrid smell caught her attention. Something wasn't right. The hair on the back of her neck stood up as she noticed wisps of dark smoke curling beneath the records room door. No, she muttered, rushing forward. When she touched the door handle, it was hot. Her heart began to race as she pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and dialed emergency services. 911. "What's your emergency?" "This is Greer Linden at Blue Hollow Animal Clinic. We have smoke in the building. There are animals inside." Her voice cracked with urgency. The smoke was getting thicker now, seeping through the cracks around the doorframe. Greer's mind raced through the clinic's layout. There were 3 post-surgical patients in recovery, plus Junebug and the kittens. She had to get them out. The sound of sirens pierced the night air just as Greer began moving the first patient, an elderly golden retriever, toward the exit. The smoke was becoming dense, making her eyes water and her throat burn. She had just gotten the dog outside when a familiar truck screeched into the parking lot. Calder Ames jumped out, still pulling on his fire gear. "Greer!" he shouted, running toward her. "Anyone else inside?" 2 more dogs in recovery, she coughed, and Junebug with the kittens. "The fire's in the records room." Calder's face hardened. "Wait for backup," he started to say, but Greer was already running back inside. He cursed and followed her, both of them ducking low under the thickening smoke. The heat was intense now, and they could hear the crackle of flames behind the records room door. Working together, they quickly got the remaining surgical patients to safety. But when they turned back for Junebug and the kittens, a thunderous crack split the air. "The ceiling's going!" Calder yelled, grabbing Greer's arm. "We need to move." "Not without them." Greer pulled free, leading the way to Junebug's corner. The smoke was so thick they could barely see, but Greer knew every inch of this clinic by heart. They found Junebug standing protectively over the kittens, her ears flat against her head. The dog's eyes were wide with fear, but she hadn't abandoned her adopted babies. Greer's throat tightened with emotion, even as she coughed from the smoke. "Here, girl," she called softly, approaching slowly despite the urgency of the situation. "Let's get you all out." Another beam groaned overhead. Calder quickly shrugged out of his fire jacket and helped Greer wrap the kittens inside it. Junebug followed willingly as they made their way toward the exit. But halfway there, a terrible splintering sound filled the air. "Down!" Calder shouted, throwing himself over Greer and Junebug as a section of ceiling collapsed behind them. The crash sent burning debris scattering across the floor, cutting off their original exit route. "This way." Greer pointed toward the side door, clutching the bundle of kittens close to her chest. They stumbled through the smoke, Junebug pressed against Greer's leg, while Calder shielded them from falling embers. They burst out into the cool night air just as the first fire engine arrived, its lights painting the scene in surreal flashes of red. Greer fell to her knees in the grass, carefully unwrapping the kittens. To her immense relief, all four were alive, though frightened. Junebug immediately began checking each one, her tail wagging with nervous energy. Calder knelt beside them, his face streaked with soot. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rough from smoke. Greer nodded, unable to speak as she watched more firefighters rush into the building. The records room was fully engulfed now, flames visible through the windows. Years of patient files, test results, and most importantly, the documentation of where she'd found the kittens, were being reduced to ash. Emergency vehicles continued to arrive, their lights illuminating gathering crowds of onlookers. Among them, Greer spotted a familiar figure speaking urgently into a phone. It was Harrison Wells, Meredith Vance's attorney. The next morning's local news painted a devastating picture. "Suspicious fire at animal clinic destroys evidence in custody battle," the headline screamed. Harrison Wells was quoted extensively, suggesting that the fire conveniently destroyed records that would have proved the kittens' true ownership. "This incident raises serious questions about Ms. Linden's competence and judgment," Wells told reporters. "Not only did she endanger these valuable show kittens, but also other animals in her care. My client, Mrs. Vance, is deeply concerned about the welfare of her property." Greer sat in her small kitchen, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, reading the article for the third time. Junebug lay at her feet, the kittens sleeping soundly in their basket nearby. They'd all been checked out by another vet after the fire. Everyone was fine, just shaken. A knock at the door startled her. It was Calder, looking as tired as she felt. "I thought you might want to see this," he said, handing her a preliminary fire investigation report. "The fire started in a wastebasket," she read aloud, her voice trembling with anger. "Probable cause, deliberately set." Calder's gray eyes were steel-hard. "Someone wanted those records destroyed. Greer, this wasn't an accident. They could have killed everyone in that clinic," she whispered, looking down at Junebug and the kittens. "All to protect their lives, which means we're getting close to something they don't want found," Calder said firmly. "You've got them scared, Greer. That's why they're fighting so dirty." Greer stood up, her exhaustion giving way to determination. If Meredith Vance thought this would make her back down, she was wrong. The fire had only proved how far the opposition was willing to go, and how important it was to expose the truth. "I need to make some calls," she said, reaching for her phone. "There have to be security cameras nearby that caught something. And I want to check on those hair samples I collected. They're at the lab. Thank goodness, not in the clinic." Calder nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. "I'll help. We'll figure this out, Greer. Together." Junebug thumped her tail against the floor in agreement, while the kittens slept on, unaware of the battle being fought over them. Looking at their peaceful faces, Greer knew she would never stop fighting to protect them, no matter what tactics Meredith Vance might use next. In the quiet aftermath of the fire, Greer sat on the clinic's front steps, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion. The acrid smell of smoke still clung to her clothes, and her hands trembled slightly as she held a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. The morning sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking lot where fire trucks and emergency vehicles had stood just hours before. What am I even doing? She whispered to herself, watching as a few early birds flitted between the trees. The weight of everything, the viral video, Meredith's accusations, and now the fire pressed down on her like a physical burden. Inside, she could hear Junebug's gentle whimpers and the tiny mews of the kittens, safely relocated to the waiting room that had escaped the worst of the smoke damage. The sound of gravel crunching under tires made her look up. A beat-up blue pickup truck pulled into the lot, parking crookedly across two spaces. The driver's door opened slowly and a young man stepped out, his movements hesitant and uncertain. Greer recognized him immediately, Tobias Vance, Meredith's son, though he looked nothing like his polished mother in his wrinkled flannel shirt and worn jeans. "Miss Linden?" His voice was barely above a whisper. I need to talk to you." Greer straightened, wariness creeping into her posture. "If your mother sent you—" "She didn't," Tobias cut in quickly, wringing his hands. "She doesn't know I'm here. I can't do this anymore. I can't sleep. I can't eat. What happened last night? The fire, it's gone too far." Something in his voice made Greer pause. She studied his face, noting the dark circles under his eyes and the way he seemed to fold in on himself, making his tall frame appear smaller. "What do you mean, gone too far?" Tobias glanced over his shoulder as if expecting to see someone watching, then hurried up the steps. "Can we go inside, please?" Once inside, Greer led him to the small break room, keeping the door open so she could hear if Junebug or the kittens needed anything. Tobias sank into a chair, his hands clasped tightly in front of him on the table. "I'm the one who left the kittens in the alley," he blurted out, the words tumbling over each other in their rush to escape. "That night during the storm, I had to save them." Greer felt her breath catch. "Save them from what?" Tears welled up in Tobias's eyes. "From being cold. Mom, she runs this whole operation at the cattery. It's all fake, the pedigrees, the championships, everything. She uses the freight company's trucks to smuggle in cats from overseas, forge their papers, and sell them as purebred show cats." His voice broke as he continued. "The kittens, they weren't perfect enough for her standards. Wrong markings, she said. She was going to get rid of them. Like she always does with the ones that don't meet her criteria." Greer felt sick to her stomach. "How long has this been going on?" "Years," Tobias whispered. "The whole operation runs through the freight company. The trucks come in at night, carrying cats from Eastern Europe, Asia, anywhere she can get them cheaper. She has people who forge papers, create fake lineages. The cats that don't make the cut," he shuddered. "I couldn't take it anymore. When I saw those kittens, but why come forward now?" Greer asked gently, though she thought she knew the answer. "The fire," Tobias said, his voice hollow. "I heard her on the phone last night, talking to someone about taking care of the problem. I never thought there were animals in there. People could have died." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a USB drive. "I've been collecting evidence. Photos, shipping manifests, recordings of conversations. It's all here." Greer stared at the small device, understanding its enormous significance. "Tobias, this is incredibly brave of you." He shook his head, tears now flowing freely. "No, it's not. I should have done something sooner. All those animals, I just stood by and watched. I was scared of her, of what would happen if I spoke up. But after seeing what she did here," he gestured at the smoke-damaged walls, "I can't be part of this anymore." A soft meow drew their attention. One of the kittens, Pip, the little gray tabby, had wandered into the break room, followed closely by Junebug, who was taking her maternal duties very seriously. Tobias's face crumpled at the sight of them. "I remember when they were born," he said softly. "Their mother was one of the imports, a beautiful Russian blue, but she died during the delivery because Mom wouldn't call a vet. Didn't want anyone asking questions. These little ones survived, but their markings weren't pure enough for papers." Junebug padded over to Tobias, placing her head on his knee as if sensing his distress. He reached down with trembling fingers to scratch behind her ears. "The video you posted," he continued. "It was like a sign. When I saw how these kittens found love and care here, with Junebug and you, I knew I'd done the right thing leaving them in that alley. But I should have done more. Should have exposed everything sooner." Greer reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "You're doing it now. That's what matters. She never forgive me," Tobias said, his voice small and scared. "Like a child's. When this comes out, she'd destroy me. We won't let that happen," Greer assured him, her determination returning in full force. The exhaustion and doubt that had plagued her earlier were burning away, replaced by a fierce resolve. "You're not alone in this anymore, Tobias. We'll make sure the truth comes out, and we'll do it the right way." She picked up the USB drive, feeling its weight, not just physical, but moral. Here was the evidence they needed, the key to exposing Meredith's cruelty and fraud. But more than that, it represented Tobias's courage, his choice to finally stand up against years of wrongdoing. "The kittens," Tobias said suddenly. Would it be okay if I visited them sometimes? After everything's done, I mean. They're the only good thing I managed to do in all of this." Greer smiled, watching as Pip climbed onto Tobias's lap, purring loudly. "They're here thanks to you, Tobias. You'll always be welcome to visit them. And hey, look at Junebug. Sometimes the most unlikely families turn out to be exactly what we need." The dog wagged her tail at the sound of her name, still keeping her watchful eye on her adopted kitten. Outside, the sun had risen fully, bringing with it the promise of a new day, and finally, the hope of justice. Greer and Calder spread the contents of Tobias's USB drive across the break room table at the clinic. Documents, photos, and spreadsheets covered every inch of surface, telling a disturbing story of years of systematic fraud and animal abuse. "Look at these shipping manifests," Calder said, holding up several papers. "They're disguised as grain shipments, but the weights and destinations don't add up. And here, these arrival times are all between 2 and 4 in the morning." Greer nodded, studying a stack of pedigree certificates. "These genetic markers are impossible. No legitimate breeding line could produce these combinations. She's been mixing in street cats and foreign imports, then falsifying their papers. They worked through the night, organizing the evidence into clear categories." Calder's experience with official documentation helped them build a timeline of Meredith's operation. Meanwhile, Greer focused on the medical aspects, documenting inconsistencies in vaccination records and genetic claims. "We need to do this right," Calder insisted, his gray eyes serious. "Meredith Vance has friends in high places. The case has to be bulletproof," Greer agreed. They carefully copied everything, creating multiple backups stored in different locations. They couldn't risk another convenient fire destroying their evidence. The next morning, they drove to the state capitol to meet with the veterinary board. Greer's hands shook slightly as she carried the thick folder of evidence into the imposing government building. Calder's steady presence beside her helped calm her nerves. The board members sat stern-faced. As Greer and Calder presented their findings, Dr. Eleanor Matthews, the head of the board, studied the documents with increasing concern. "These vaccination records," Dr. Matthews said, "they're dated during a national shortage when no clinic in the state had access to these supplies. And these genetic test results," she shook her head. "This is deeply troubling." "There's more," Greer said, pulling out Tobias's photos. "These show the actual conditions in the Vance cattery. The overcrowding, the sick animals hidden from inspectors, The board members passed the photos around, their expressions growing darker. Dr. Matthews straightened in her chair. This is enough for immediate action. We'll coordinate with local law enforcement for a surprise inspection. No, multiple raids. We can't risk her hiding evidence. Greer felt tears of relief threatening to spill. After weeks of fighting, of being dismissed and ridiculed, finally someone was listening. Finally something would be done. The raids were scheduled for the next morning. Greer and Calder watched from a discreet distance as police cars and animal control vehicles converged on the Vance estate. Through binoculars they could see Meredith Vance emerge from her mansion, her usual composure cracking as officials presented their warrants. "They're going in," Calder murmured, squeezing Greer's shoulder gently. For hours, they observed the systematic search of the property. Officers emerged carrying boxes of documents. Animal control workers brought out carrier after carrier of cats, loading them carefully into their vehicles. Greer's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Matthews. "Evidence matches your documentation. Multiple violations confirmed. Emergency suspension of all licenses pending full investigation." She showed the message to Calder, who pulled her into a tight hug. "You did it," he said softly. "You stood your ground and fought for what was right." "We did it," Greer corrected him, thinking of everyone who had helped, Calder's unwavering support, Tobias's brave decision to come forward, even Junebug's viral video that had started it all. "And it's not over yet, but for the first time we're winning," Calder finished. They watched as Meredith was escorted to a police car for questioning, her perfect facade finally crumbling. Back at the clinic, Junebug greeted them with enthusiastic tail wags, her 4 adopted kittens tumbling around her feet. Greer knelt to scratch behind the dog's ears. "Good girl," she whispered. "You helped start all this, you know that." For now at least, it seemed justice was finally within reach. The truth was out, and Meredith's cruel empire was crumbling. Greer knew there would be more battles ahead, legal challenges, attempts at intimidation, the long process of finding homes for all the rescued cats. But for this moment, watching Junebug tenderly nose her kittens back toward their bed, she allowed herself to feel hope. The morning sun cast long shadows through the windows of Greer's kitchen as she organized the evidence against Meredith Vance. Her phone buzzed with an urgent text from Calder. "Turn on the news, now." With trembling fingers, Greer reached for the remote. There on the screen stood Tobias Vance, his face ashen, standing beside his mother at a press conference outside the Vance estate. "I deeply regret my earlier false statements." Tobias read woodenly from a prepared statement, his eyes never meeting the camera. "The accusations I made against my mother and Vance Enterprises were completely fabricated. I was manipulated by Miss Linden into making these claims." Greer's coffee mug slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. She barely noticed the hot liquid seeping into her socks as Meredith stepped up to the microphone, her perfectly coiffed appearance a stark contrast to Tobias' obvious distress. "As a mother, it breaks my heart to see how this woman preyed upon my son's gentle nature," Meredith declared, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Not only did she steal our prize-winning kittens, but she has now attempted to destroy our family's reputation with these outrageous allegations." The doorbell rang, its cheerful chime incongruous with the nightmare unfolding. Through the window, Greer saw 3 police cruisers parked in her driveway, their lights flashing silently in the morning sun. "Greer Linden," Sheriff Matthews called out, his voice heavy. "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of grand theft, arson, and criminal conspiracy." Junebug began barking from the bedroom where she and the kittens were nestled in their bed. The sound of her faithful companion gave Greer strength as she opened the door with shaking hands. "Please," she pleaded as the officers entered. "The animals need care. They can't be moved yet. The kittens are still nursing." Behind the officers came 2 representatives from animal control, their expressions grim. "We have orders to take custody of all animals on the premises," one stated, avoiding eye contact. "No." Greer lurched toward the bedroom, but strong hands caught her arms, cold metal closing around her wrists. "You don't understand. Junebug is their mother now. They won't survive without her." She watched helplessly as the animal control officers emerged with the carrier containing the mewling kittens. Junebug followed, straining against a catchpole, her eyes wild with fear and confusion as she was separated from her adopted babies. "Please," Greer begged, tears streaming down her face. "At least keep them together. They need each other." But her pleas fell on deaf ears as Junebug was loaded into one van and the kittens into another. The last thing Greer saw before being placed in the police car was her sweet dog's face in the window, ears drooping, letting out a mournful howl that shattered her heart. At the station, the booking process passed in a blur of fingerprints, photographs, and monotone instructions. Her phone and personal belongings were confiscated. The thin mattress in the holding cell offered little comfort as she curled up, alone with her thoughts. Hours crawled by. Through the small window, she could see protesters gathering outside the station, their signs visible even from her restricted view. "Animal abuser." "Justice for the Vance family." "Fraud." A guard appeared with a newspaper, sliding it through the food slot without comment. The headline made her stomach lurch. "Local vet tech's web of lies unravels, prestigious family vindicated." The article painted her as an attention-seeking fraud who had orchestrated the entire viral video scenario for fame, stolen valuable show cats, and then burned down her own workplace to cover her tracks. Meredith had managed to spin every piece of evidence they'd gathered against her into proof of Greer's supposed crimes. "Your attorney's here," a guard announced late that afternoon. Instead of Calder's recommended lawyer, though, a court-appointed defender appeared, looking harried and overwhelmed. "Miss Linden, I'll be frank," he said, shuffling through her file. "The evidence against you is substantial. Multiple witnesses place you near the clinic before the fire. The Vance family has documentation proving ownership of those kittens. And now with Tobias Vance's recantation," he shook his head, "I strongly advise accepting a plea deal, but none of that is true." Greer protested, her voice hoarse from crying. "The documentation is forged. Tobias told us everything about the smuggling operation. He must have been pressured into changing his story. Unless you can prove that, it's your word against one of the most respected families in the state. And right now, public opinion is strongly against you." After he left, Greer paced the small cell, 6 steps each way. The concrete walls seemed to close in with each passing hour. She had never felt so utterly alone. No Junebug's warm presence at her feet. No tiny kitten mews to fill the silence. Even the sound of her own footsteps echoed mockingly. Night fell, bringing no relief from her torment. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Junebug's confused face as she was dragged away, heard the frightened cries of the kittens. Were they being kept together? Was anyone comforting them? The thought of them suffering, separated and scared, was almost more than she could bear. In the darkness of her cell, Greer faced the crushing weight of her situation. Everything she had fought for, the animal's safety, exposing Meredith's cruelty, proving her own worth, seemed to have crumbled to dust. Her reputation was destroyed, her freedom gone, and worst of all, she had failed to protect the innocent creatures who depended on her. A sob caught in her throat as she pressed her forehead against the cold cell wall. The same community that had once celebrated the heartwarming story of Junebug and her adopted kittens now believed her to be a manipulative criminal. Even Tobias, who had seemed so determined to do the right thing, had betrayed her under his mother's influence. The night grew deeper, marked only by the occasional footsteps of guards making their rounds. In this lowest moment, completely cut off from everything and everyone she loved, Greer wondered if she had been foolish to think she could stand against someone as powerful as Meredith Vance. Perhaps she should have handed over the kittens when first demanded, kept her head down, stayed in her place as just a tech, But then she remembered the feel of tiny lives depending on her care. Junebug's gentle devotion to her adopted babies, the trust in their eyes. No, she thought fiercely, even knowing this outcome, she would make the same choice again. Because someone had to stand up for those who couldn't speak for themselves, no matter the personal cost. Still, as she finally lay down on the thin mattress, the silence of the cell was deafening. Never had she felt more alone, more defeated, more cut off from everything that gave her life meaning. Sleep eluded her as she stared at the ceiling, wondering if this was how her story would end. Alone in a cell, branded a criminal, while Meredith Vance continued her cruel operation, unchecked. As the first rays of dawn filtered through the narrow cell window, Greer sat up suddenly, her mind latching onto a memory that had been nagging at her subconscious. She remembered the peculiar blue-tinted grit she'd brushed from the kitten's fur that first night. At the time, she'd been too focused on their immediate care to question it, but now, guard! She called out. I need to speak with Calder Ames immediately. It's urgent. Hours later, Calder stood at the visiting window, his gray eyes intense as Greer explained about the distinctive silica dust. The grain terminal, he said, nodding in recognition. The Vance operation uses a specific type of silica to prevent moisture damage. It has that unique blue tint. Could you get a sample? Greer asked, pressing her hand against the glass that separated them. If we can match it to what was on the kittens. I'm already on it, Calder assured her, his weathered face set with determination. While Calder worked on obtaining samples from the terminal, an unexpected ally emerged. Zadie Knox, the retired cat breeder known for her sharp tongue and sharper eyes, had been watching the Vance property. She'd noticed something odd at one of the old grain silos. A scraggly female cat, clearly a former show animal, sneaking in and out through a broken vent. That's no ordinary stray, Zadie reported to Calder when he visited her farm. That's a retired queen, probably one of Meredith's discards. And by the look of her, she recently had kittens. Together, they documented the cat's movements, taking photographs and gathering more of the telltale blue silica from around the silo. The evidence was building, the distinctive grain dust, the matching timeline of the queen's pregnancy, and Tobias's original testimony about rescuing the kittens from culling. The pieces were finally aligning, creating a clear picture that connected the abandoned kittens directly to the Vance operation. With each new bit of evidence, the truth became harder to deny. These weren't stolen show cats, they were unwanted offspring that Meredith had ordered destroyed, saved only by her son's moment of conscience. This physical evidence would be harder to dismiss than Tobias's recanted testimony. The blue silica was unique to the Vance terminal, and its presence on the kittens that first night could only be explained by their origin in the facility. It was the breakthrough they'd been waiting for, tangible proof that couldn't be explained away by Meredith's influence or legal maneuvering. Within hours of her release on bail, Greer and Calder raced toward the Vance grain terminal in his truck. The evening sky had turned an ominous gray, matching the hulking silhouettes of the silos ahead. We have to hurry, Greer said, her heart pounding. If Meredith figures out we found the queen cat. They pulled up to the terminal just as another vehicle arrived. Meredith's sleek black SUV, the kennel manager, a burly man in work boots, jumped out first. Meredith emerged more slowly, her pearl necklace gleaming against her dark suit. Stop them! Greer shouted, already running toward the third silo. Calder was right behind her as they raced up the metal stairs that wound around the structure's exterior. Inside, the queen cat crouched on a high catwalk, frightened by the sudden commotion. The kennel manager reached the control panel first. With a cruel smile, he yanked the grain release lever. A deafening roar filled the silo as thousands of pounds of grain began pouring from the upper chambers. The blue-tinted silica pellets cascaded down like a waterfall, threatening to bury everything in their path. Calder, get back! Greer screamed, seeing the torrent heading straight for him. She lunged forward, grabbing a metal bar and jamming it into the release gate's mechanism. The force of the grain nearly pulled her arm from its socket, but she held on. "You fool!" Meredith's voice echoed through the silo. "You'll destroy everything I've built." "No, Mother." Tobias appeared on the catwalk above, phone held high. "You've destroyed it yourself." He pressed play, and Meredith's own voice filled the space. "Get rid of that queen and her kittens. I don't care how. They're evidence of the breeding fraud, and they need to disappear. Now." The grain flow slowly ceased as Greer's improvised jam held. Police sirens wailed outside, growing closer. Officers poured into the silo, weapons drawn. "Meredith Vance," the lead officer announced. "You're under arrest for animal cruelty, fraud, and attempted assault." As Meredith was led away in handcuffs, her perfect composure finally cracked. The queen cat emerged from her hiding spot, fur dusted with blue silica, living proof of Meredith's crimes. Calder helped Greer to her feet, both of them covered in grain but very much alive. "You did it," he said softly, brushing silica from her hair. "You saved them all." Greer watched as animal control officers gently collected the queen cat, knowing that justice had finally caught up with Meredith Vance. The police lights flashed, blue and red against the terminal's metal walls, as officers led Meredith Vance away in handcuffs. Her perfectly coiffed hair was disheveled, and her designer suit was covered in grain dust. The composed matriarch's mask had finally cracked, revealing the desperation beneath. "You can't do this to me. Do you know who I am?" Meredith's voice echoed across the lot. Tobias stepped forward, his shoulders straight despite the tears in his eyes. "Mother, it's over. I've given them everything. The forged papers, the shipping schedules, all of it." His voice grew stronger. "I'm sorry, but I can't keep quiet anymore. Those animals deserved better." The detective nodded approvingly at Tobias before turning to Greer. "Ms. Linden, all charges against you are being dropped immediately. We have more than enough evidence of Ms. Vance's operation, including her attempt to frame you for arson." Relief washed over Greer like a warm rain. She felt Calder's steady presence beside her as animal control officers brought out carriers containing Junebug and the kittens. The sweet hound bounded toward her, tail wagging furiously. "Hey girl," Greer whispered, burying her face in Junebug's soft fur. "We did it. We're going home." In the weeks that followed, Tobias worked with authorities to make amends. He helped relocate dozens of cats from his mother's operation to legitimate shelters and contributed his trust fund to animal welfare organizations. The local paper ran a front-page story clearing Greer's name and exposing the truth about the Vance scandal. With her reputation restored, Greer took a leap of faith. She officially adopted Junebug and one of the kittens, the little gray one she'd first found in the rain. Using her savings and some community donations, she outfitted a van as a mobile veterinary clinic. "Trust is earned," she explained to a local reporter. "I want to meet people and their pets where they are. Show them they can count on good care without fancy facilities." One evening, as she finished treating a farmer's horse, she found Calder waiting by her van. He'd been there through everything: the fire, the arrest, the vindication. His gray eyes held something new as he took her hand. "You know," he said softly, "watching you fight for what's right, never giving up, it made me realize something. Life's better with you in it, Greer. A lot better." He squeezed her hand. "I was wondering if maybe you'd like to share that life with me." Greer looked at Junebug dozing in the van, at the kitten playing with Calder's bootlaces, at the man who'd believed in her when no one else would. Her heart felt full enough to burst. "Yes," she said simply, and stepped into his embrace. "Yes to all of it. Thank you for watching." Stories like this remind us who we are. If something touched your heart, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be back tomorrow with another story that just might stay with you.